All right, good evening, everyone. It's good to see you out on this fine Wednesday evening. It's kind of hard to get used to getting dark as early as it is now. I know, I know. So,
I do too.
yeah, I'm ready for cool weather.
4:30 and thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's then he dropped him anyway. He's a ball player, right? Baseball player. That's what he is. Yeah. He just didn't have his glove. That's the reason he didn't catch it, right? Oh, mercy. Anyway, it's good to see y'all. Hope everything's going well with you. Little girl's still in the hospital, I guess.
She went home with her.
Oh, okay.
Her family yesterday.
Oh, cool.
They're going to. That's the plan.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. We just keep everyone in our prayers.
Where's Zoom? Right.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Yeah. Just remember all the folks on our prayer list. Certainly keep Philip and Kelly in your prayers. As they, Kelly was in a sling Sunday. She had some arm pain. Philip had not had a good week with whatever's going on with him. So keep both of them in your prayers. Wendy Allen is she's been having a lot of pain. I don't know exactly what's going on, but anyway, good evening, Wendy and Miss Francis. So do remember these folks. Remember Janie Adams. This is Brittany Galloway's grandma. She is going to start radiation treatment. They did find that the cancer was just in her jaw and not all over. So they're going to do several weeks of radiation and then see where they go from there. So do keep her in your prayers. Danny got good news, and
Actually, it tanked.
oh, did he? Well, she had good news.
My insurance doesn't work with the
Oh.
hospitals, so now we're trying to reschedule.
That's why you have insurance, so they won't work with the hospitals,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So anyway, she's trying to get her foot surgery taken care of and had it scheduled, but anyway, insurance kind of blew that, so keep her in your prayers. Keep Kevin in your prayers as he continues to heal. Keep Ryan in your prayers as he continues to heal. We got a bunch of gimpy people in the church right now, but at least they're getting stuff done about it, and hopefully they'll be well pretty soon. So anyway, remember Nancy Husky, her children, she passed away. Jim Rayburn's family, remember him? I think it was him that Greg gave the name that the son passed away. So remember these folks in your prayers. Of course, remember a little girl as she is in her adoptive home. She was in the hospital with some respiratory stuff, but has been able to go home, get out of there. So keep her and them and everybody concerned in your prayers there. Again, just a lot going on. We are entering the holiday season. I mean, it's close at hand, so it will be here before you know it. Some people are going to, and some people are going, yay! So anyway, just depends on which side of that fence you're on there. But it is coming this weekend. This Saturday, we're going to the pumpkin patch. We're going to leave here at 2. If you have not signed up to go there, let Michelle know, because she needs numbers so that she knows the amount of money kid-wise. Adults, not as important because we have to pay for ourselves, but kid-wise. So let her know if you're going. We are going to meet back at the church after the pumpkin patch. It closes at 7, so we won't be there very late. So we're going to meet back here and do some s'mores and that kind of thing, because not able to do it there. So Billy has already gathered some wood, even though my son's dog has been trying to drag it off because he is a stick freak. because he lives in an apartment now and he doesn't get the opportunity to play with sticks. But your pile is still there. Yeah, he's a stick getter too. But anyway, he was messing with it yesterday when I had him out, and I was like, no, it needs to be there.
He got a log off
Yeah.
the campfire at Amanda's house. It was about this big around. Dragged it off.
So anyway, look forward to that. The weather's supposed to be nice and cool, so it'll be good campfire weather. So keep that in your prayers. We do have a memorial service for Miss Betty, Ernie's mom. We're having a memorial service here Saturday at 11 o'clock. We are feeding the family following that. If you need to bring some food early, we have a food warmer now. So we'll have that going pretty early because I already know of one that's going to, no. But Miss Judy took the book home and was going to call her brother that donated the money for that knows about them, so he can fill us in. When I looked at the book that came with it, I didn't gather much instructional information there. So
Do I need to send out any word about the bringing food for the family?
we can. Most people do know, but it wouldn't hurt to send it out maybe tomorrow. But yeah, we are so I mean, this is not going to be a late thing as far as that goes. I don't think the memorial service will take that long. So not that we're trying to cut it short, but most families do not want long services. And then of course we'll feed directly following that. So anyway, just keep these things in your prayers. And then our trunk or treat event is going to be on the 30th this year, and we're starting at 6 and going to 8. And so that is a Saturday. So we also have a sign-up list for vehicles that want to decorate and be a part of that. We're also planning on feeding nachos and that kind of thing. There is supposed to be, I think, a food sign-up list, but I don't think it got put up. But maybe Sunday it'll get put up. So anyway, we're probably going to do nachos and maybe some chili and Fritos to make some Frito chili pies and that kind of thing. So anyway, we'll get a list up for that. So, we're starting to get back into it. We had a little meeting tonight about Christmas time. So just be in prayers. We strive to get our fellowship going again and getting people together, and hopefully that'll work out and we can get back in that mode. So again, just keep everybody in your prayers. Morning, sir, or evening, whatever it is. My days are kind of all running together. So anyway, any other prayer requests?
Is Brenda Anderson on there?
Yes, she is. Brenda Anderson is on there.
Returned for the worst, and they put her on
Okay.
hospice.
Remember Brenda Anderson and said they put her on hospice. So keep them in your prayers. Lily Howell, is she doing okay?
I haven't heard
Hadn't
any
heard?
more.
Okay. What about who was it? Danny?
I have. He hasn't. The last I heard, he hadn't gone to the specialist.
Okay. So anyway, keep these folks in your prayers. I hear that Mr. Wiggs' shoulder is bothering him pretty good, so keep him in your prayers. We added Glendale Minyard as well. He is in the hospital, thought he might have had a slight heart attack. So keep these folks all in your prayers. Again, it's good to see everyone on live stream. We're almost through the book of Judges. Next week we'll end up. I do not know where we're going to next, but I'm kind of leaning towards going to one of the minor prophets. We started at the beginning with Genesis, Exodus. We've done Judges, so we may go kind of towards the end of the Old Testament and hit, one of the minor prophets there. So, sing it for us, babe. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm thinking. So anyway, just keep that in matter of prayer, and we'll try to start that in the next couple of weeks. If we do start a new series before Christmas, I will probably this year take a break from that and do a Christmas series, so we may have a little break in our readings and discussion on that. So, we may go ahead and study it. I may just not preach on it for 4 Sundays. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I kind of miss out though when we're reading and not preaching on it. So we may just have to take a break, for Christmas break, and then pick it up January. So we'll see how it goes. But my mind.
And when you say take a break from our Bible reading, you mean from our group-focused Bible reading,
Yes,
right?
yes, not from Bible reading in general. We need to continue that, but from our soaping activities. So, anyway, again, it's time is blowing and going, and so just remember everything that's going on and try to keep up. I will say that we will be changing websites. I don't know if that's going to change our domain or not. I don't know how many people use it, but that's always an area you can go to if you have any questions. John has been pretty diligent about keeping that up to date. So with announcements and that kind of thing.
Our bulletin is up there every week, and our prayer list is up there every week.
Yeah, and you can go look at that as well on our Facebook page. So there are different avenues to get information if you forget or you're not sure or have not heard.
Also a link to our YouTube channel.
Yes,
where
we
the
have a
videos
YouTube
are.
channel. So we're just all techie in here. And anyway, so hopefully you can be in touch and stay up to date on things, because we don't want anybody to get left out. So anyway, anything else before we move on? Now it's quiet. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we love you so much, and oftentimes we don't realize how blessed we are through the gift that you've given us of salvation, and just how much you do love us. And so, God, help us just to take time out of our busy lives and just to know that you are God, just to know the love that you have for us, just to know the preciousness of that gift of salvation and the work that you continue to do in our lives. And we meet in this place for a purpose. And we meet to worship your name. We also meet to learn and to mature in your word and in the Christian life. And so, God, just guide us and lead us as we do that, and just help us to be very diligent about us. Our world is in a mode to where it wants to take our attention from you and away from your word and the truths that are within it. And so, God, help us not to get caught up in that, but help us to be loyal, help us to be committed, and help us just to do your blessed will. Thank you again for all you continue to do in our lives. We know that you have watched and cared over us through all of this craziness in the world that's been going on, particularly over this last year and a half. And so we ask your continued blessings. Just continue to bless our church. And again, help that everything that we do, that we strive to honor and glorify you and none other. We love you and praise you, and just bless this time together in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we are getting into the nitty-gritty tonight. Is one of the most horrifying stories you will ever read is in chapter 19.
And people say the Bible's boring.
Yeah,
All the stuff was horrible movie time.
Judges has been a good study because, again, it shows the place that people can get to when God is not the center of their lives. It would be very easy to do that today, to get off track, to follow the ways of the world, to get our thinking in the place where it ought not to be. And so, we need to be ready for that, and we need to be prepared. And so the book of Judges has definitely given us some lessons on that. And again, these last 5 chapters, starting with 17, pretty much deal with the time before the Judges began. And so this is early on, very possibly right after the death of Joshua and the elders that, kind of kept things together and kept the nation of Israel focused on God. So this is a period of time before the judges started. So we see that again, and I didn't realize this, but there are 4 mentions in these 5 chapters that state, in those days there was no king in Israel. Now, a couple of places it goes on to say, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. But there are 4 chapters that, the only chapter that does not have that in it is chapter 20, which chapter 20 is a continuation of chapter 19. So we need to understand that is a theme and a focus that these 5 chapters have, is what happens when when a culture does not have godly leadership. I've heard of people that, they say, well, public schools are getting so bad, I ought to take my kids out of public school and put them in private school. But here's the deal. What if teachers and Christian teachers and students left the public school system? What would it, it's bad enough now, what would it be like then? And that's the thing. God has planted us in the world that even though it doesn't look like we're making much of a difference, imagine if God's people simply pulled back and didn't have a whole lot to do. There was no godly leadership at all. Even as bad as we view our government a lot of times, there are still some godly people within our government that keeps it from being as bad as it could be. And we need to understand that, because, anywhere you read in the Bible where God's people, where the evil was trying to destroy God, there's always a remnant left, that has an influence on the culture. And so this is kind of, this is one of the emphasis of these 5 chapters is the fact there was no godly leadership. And in particular, the people did not look to God for leadership. And so when we read these 5 chapters, you're just going, how in the world did they get there? Well, that's how they got there. They turned their backs on God, and they had no one to help them revert back. So after I've said all that, we are going through chapters 19 and 20 of Judges. So if someone would like to share, ask a question, whatever it is, now is your chance.
Verse 28 of 19. This guy was not very compassionate, I wouldn't think. This woman is laying there. He doesn't really know that she's dead, but he says, get up and let's go.
Yeah. Now you know why she left him. Seriously. What's interesting between 19 and 20, when the Levite tells his story, he leaves a few things out, doesn't he?
Sure does.
And again, to me, I guess we live in a different culture at a different time, but still, there's no excuse. But these men were willing to throw the girls under the bus. It's the exact same thing that happened with Lot, right? In Sodom and Gomorrah. When those guys came to the house and was wanting Lot, the owner of the house was ready, or Lot himself was ready to throw his daughters out to the wolves and let them have their way with them. So, again, 19 starts within those days there was no king in Israel. Again, the leadership was not there, and people were just doing their own thing. And so, in that culture in particular, and in some of those cultures, it's the same way today. Women did not hold much value. And she, in this story in particular, was a concubine, which some writers describe as a legal mistress. So Mr. Levite was not doing what he was living the way he was supposed to be living either, you know? And so this was a terrible, terrible thing. You know, you kind of read this story and you think, well, you always think about the what ifs. You know, if something bad happens in your life, you kind of think about the what ifs. You know, if some accident happens or something like that. I've been in a couple of vehicle accidents where I always, for about a week or so, your mind is just reeling of if I had done this or if I had done that or this could have happened or, you know. And so when you read this chapter 19, you think, okay, you know, at the beginning, she leaves him, goes to her father's house. He goes to get her. And the dad just keeps saying, well, just hang out, you know, eat and drink and just hang out again. And then you can leave in the morning. And then the morning comes, well, just hang out until later and then you can leave. And, you know, he finally leaves, but it's in the afternoon, late afternoon. And so there's no way that they're going to get home. And so you think, well, if he had made better choices as far as time to leave, they could have gone on home and this probably never would have happened. But again, it didn't have to happen. You know, they didn't have to give in to those people, but they did. And like you said, it was tragic because he gets up and he gets ready to leave and she's laying out there. I mean, he never bothered checking on her at night, I guess, or anything, but she's laying out there by the door and get up, it's time to go. And she doesn't move. And so it kind of seems without any remorse when he gets home, he cuts her into pieces and sends her out amongst the tribes of Israel. I mean, you know, and again, the old guy that took the Levite and the concubine in and the Levite, they were both guilty of not protecting the people that were under their care. And so they're really, except for the concubine, there were no innocent parties here, were there? And yes, what the men of Gibeah did was horrible, was terrible, to abuse a woman in such a way that she dies. But, you know, she was out there for a reason. Because they said, hey, we don't want to die today, so go out there and rescue us, you know. And so that's what happened. So, you know, again, when we look at this, we see depravity at one of its worst phases, probably about as low as it can go, to abuse and misuse a human being to the point that they die. But you know, it's the here today. I mean, human trafficking is one of the most horrific things that could happen. To not value life any more than that, and to abuse and use a person as they do, it is a horrible, horrible thing. And, you know, it's not just human trafficking. There's drug trafficking. I mean, there's all sorts of avenues for human abuse nowadays. And, of course, it's always been around. But it's sad that mankind has not progressed past that, you know. And so it really was a terrible thing. Now, it's interesting, too, that when this Levite and concubine were on the journey, I think there was a servant there, too, right? They went by what we know as Jerusalem, but Jews were not in control of Jerusalem. The Jebusites were, and so the servant says, well, why don't we stay here? And the Levite says, well, you know, we don't want to stay here with those heathen people. You know, like this was such a terrible place. So he goes to one of the tribes of Israel, and this is what happens. You know, so again, there's no perfect people.
So the man that took him in, he was in Gibeah, but he was not a Benjamite?
No, the man that took him also lived in the hills of Ephraim. He was just there for work, from what I gather. And he was like, you know, today he's probably renting a place in order to work, and then he would make some money and get some you know, supplies, and then go back to the hills of Ephraim. So that's kind of what I gathered out of that. So, you know, just terrible, terrible circumstances. Anybody have anything on that section there?
Makes me wonder how they knew he was there, the men of the city. I mean, you know,
Well, I don't know. Unless they saw him,
Word got out there was some fresh meat in town.
unless they saw him in the town square. You know, he and his concubine and servant stayed at the town square. You know, back then, you know, in New Testament times, there were not like hotels and places like we have today. You know, like when people came to Jerusalem for the Pentecost, a lot of the ways that those people had a place to stay was people would invite them into their homes during this time. That's how they found shelter. And so that kind of sounds like what this Levite was doing. You know, they were hanging out in the town square waiting for somebody to invite them to stay with them. And, you know, their fellow tribesmen, nobody wanted anything to do with them. Nobody paid them any attention until this old guy took them up to his house, and then that's when they paid him the wrong kind of attention.
Oh,
So,
it sounds like these men were, I mean, there was just no king in Israel, there was no leadership, they were just running wild doing whatever they wanted to, and there was no controls on them.
yeah, I mean, honestly, there was no laws. There was no one, if there were laws, there was no one to uphold the laws. I mean, you know, it's kind of like the Wild West, you know, they just, until the law got there, I mean, people were just killing whoever they want to, and it didn't really matter.
And the thing that I couldn't believe was the Benjaminites.
The Benjamites.
Benjamites, okay, that's better. Wouldn't give those men up. I mean,
Yeah.
if you had somebody living in your town that you knew had done something like that,
Right.
if they did it to her, they might do it to somebody else's daughter or wife.
That really is a weird thing. You know, why would you protect people that did that kind of thing? I don't know. It's a strange world we live in because people still do it today. You know, they protect people that, you know, are criminals, and it's just sad.
There you go.
Because if you tell them, they'll just kind of do it to you next.
Yeah, and that could be. But, you know, they'd rather all out war than, you know, doing what and giving them up. So, I mean, those guys weren't going to be around anymore if they would have given them up.
Well, and
'Cause-
to give the rest of the nation credit, they did try to, you know, reason with them, just give these folks over and have them do it.
Yeah. So, I mean, chapter 20 is also pretty interesting because, you know, here we have for the first time in a while, especially in the land of Canaan, where they've gone to their inheritance, where we actually have the Israelites gathered together for a purpose. You know, this was such a shocking thing. Like I said Sunday, imagine getting a body part in the mail. And a letter that says, you know, this person was killed in a brutal way, and it may have described it some, but, you know, it got their attention. And so, again, they meet at Mizpah, and it says all the chiefs of all the people, or the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God. So you have, obviously there were some leadership that went on in the cities, but, you know, overall law-abiding citizens and those that upheld the law, apparently there wasn't any. There were representatives of the people. It also says that 400,000 men on foot that drew a sword. So here's my thought when I read this. Why did Israel not take the 400,000 people surround Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, and force them to give these guys up or face death. Why didn't they just do that? There were 400,000 versus 20,700. So I mean, 26,700. Yeah. 26,000, 6,000 when it's more against 400,000, not going to make much difference. So my thought is that, when they talked about the lot of the tribe, that they held for the tribes that would go first, my thinking is they must have sent one tribe in at a time or something. Because obviously 400,000 people did not go against 26,700 and lose that many people. I mean, yeah, God can do things if he wants to, but still, I just can't see where, that many people went against that few of people and totally lost. Of course, we know that Samson,
On the other side.
he killed 1,000 people, but, this doesn't seem to be that case, But again, they said, should we go fight? And God responded, yes, but that was where it stopped too. Mm-hmm. So, they weren't like in tune with God and said, okay, God, how are we supposed to do this? And we want to rely on you to fight for us. They just said, okay, Judah was picked first, so woohoo, we must be special. And so we can go and beat them. And they, 22,000 men down later, they decided they couldn't. And then, of course,
What's the significance this time? I know it's been mentioned before, and there was a specific purpose for mentioning it. Verse 16, all the people, there were 700 chosen men, left-handed.
They're expert slingers with an advantage since their shots would come at an unaccustomed angle.
because left-handed people were kind of
Well, that was the case when one of the judges, I don't know, was left-handed and he ran the other guy through
Yeah.
an unexpected direction, but I guess that was.
yeah. So it said, and these guys could sling a stone in the hair and not miss.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that
Pretty
word
accurate.
miss, that word miss is an important word. You know what word it in Hebrew it's for? Sin. We missed the mark. Yeah, that word miss is the same word used for sin in the Hebrew language. So, of course, them dudes slinging stones from far away. I guess they could do away with some people if they had a pile of stones there. I don't know, but 700 stones coming at you at one time, I guess it could down quite a few people, couldn't it? So, the battle breaks out, and, what we would consider the good guys. You basically have 11 tribes against one. And they are trying to avenge this terrible thing that has happened and to rid the nation of Israel of the evil that these men have brought upon, the tribes of Israel. And so they lose 2 battles, right? They lose at least 40,000 men. That's a pretty significant number. And so when you get down into it, they fast, they offer burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. The priest is there, and the Ark of the Covenant is there, and so they finally inquire of the Lord, shall we go out once more to battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease? And the Lord says, and this is the answer, before the Lord always says, yes, go on to battle. But this time he says, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So, there is an added thing where God says, I'm going to be with you this time, where apparently he was not with them before. Even though he told them to go to battle, they did not go with him under his power. So
That mention of the priest again is another thing that places this back earlier than the rest of the book, kind of like an appendix, the mention of Phinehas, the son of
yeah, Eliezer.
Son of Aaron,
Yeah.
kind of dates it back previously.
So, they go in verse 35 says, and the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the people of Israel destroyed 100 men of Benjamin that day. Now, since Benjamin reacted the way that they did, we can understand the killing of their own, right? I mean, this was a serious offense. They didn't want to comply with the request, and they gathered. From what I can see, they kind of gathered. Benjamin immediately kind of gathered for battle, as well as the other tribes, and so the line was set, and so that's what they did. They went to war, but. Here's the thing. We understand the 25,100 men of Benjamin being killed, right? But here's the thing. And the only reason I'm saying this is I've been studying chapter 21 that I'm preaching out Sunday. But they took it too far. Because not only did they kill men that they were fighting, but they treated the tribe of Benjamin just like they treated many of the Canaanite cities when they would go in there and they would just wipe out everybody. And so you've got this situation to where they burned the cities there and they kill the inhabitants of the cities. Now, a lot of these people, these were innocent people. They were not necessarily a part of this war. And yet they were casualties of this war because, again, here's the thing. Even though God was fighting for them and all that, they still were not totally under his control. Because at the end of chapter 21, you know what the words say. The ending of the book of Judges. There was no king in Israel at that time, and everyone did what was evil in his own eyes.
Or right.
In his own, right. And everyone did what was right in his own eyes. They
But
did
they-
evil in the eyes of God. So, another terrible tragedy occurs because of that. A whole, bless you, just about a whole tribe is wiped out. You know how many people, as far as we know, were left of the tribe of Benjamin? 600 people. And they were all men. Yeah, because they were part of the fighting force, and they escaped when they found out that, hey, we were beaten. So they got out of there and went and hid in a cave. And so, again, it shows you that unless God is fully in control, things will get out of control, right? Because honestly, there was no reason personally for them to burn all of the cities. There was no reason for them to kill the women and children in particular, and really including the men that were not fighting men. There was no reason for them to kill the inhabitants of Benjamin. They were fighting a war, a civil war, but there was no reason for them to kill them. And so, tragedy struck the nation of Israel, and a whole tribe was almost wiped out. And really and truthfully, right after the battle, the men had to view, well, the tribe of Benjamin is done. Because they had no way to build it back up. Because there was no Benjamite women to carry on the seed of that tribe. And so,
I was gonna think of Benjamin.
I got that in my head.
wave it to the preacher's wife, right?
No, I think I had to.
Actually, and truthfully, yeah. Anyway. So it is a sad situation. And the book of Judges is kind of a sad book. Because there's never a victory that really is a lasting victory. You know, there's always a defeat around the corner. There's always the hearts of the nation turning back to idolatry and to the worldly ways. And so again, the book of Judges ought to be a good reminder to us that evil is real, and even though we're saved, we're not perfect, and we are just as apt to go down to the depths of sin that these people went. If there is no king and we do right, we do what was right in our own eyes. I mean, that's exactly the deal. And what we've been studying on Sunday night has a lot to do with that. You know, if you're saved, the Spirit dwells within you. And if He dwells within you, then He needs to be controlling you. And if He's not controlling you, then chances are you will go back to and live for yourself and fulfill the natural desires of the flesh rather than doing what God wants us to do. And so, you know, this is a prime example of how that happens. And so we need to be very aware that the world has an amazing and a very long-lasting, powerful influence on us if we do not, you know, if God is not sitting on the throne of our hearts and His Word is not living in our lives, then we too will go the way of the world.
You know, we read with horror the story of what the Benjamites did to the concubine, and then what the Levite demanded some kind of retaliation, and then the 11 tribes went in and just massacred the Benjamites. But you know, we sit here and read that with horror, but there's similar terrible things going on in our country right now.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm not saying we turn a blind eye to them, but
If it doesn't affect us.
yeah, it's easy to say, oh, how terrible, and wring our hands. And
well, I mean, today, you know, what happened here in chapter 19, I mean, they'd have it all over the news. And
oh yeah,
You know, I
I
mean-
mean, I'm even thinking of you know.
might want to make a movie about it.
Trafficking and abortion and you know,
Yeah.
the things that our country that is going on today. You know,
And then we get numb to it.
yeah.
Oh, I guarantee it.
Especially if you're watching news a lot, or.
And
My
really,
folks put it on behind them as background noise.
and really and truthfully, something that you don't see in chapter 20 is, yes, the 11 tribes were shocked over this, but you don't see the mourning going on over the sin
They're
that
mourning over
was
the fact that they were
brought
they not
into
been successful in battle.
the nation. I mean, yeah, when they go and cry out to the Lord, they're crying because they lost
They get beat up.
almost, we lost the battle, you know, we lost this war. And so it's sad, you know, that it didn't affect them more than that. I mean, look at the Levite. We never read where he mourns over her. You know,
Outraged.
he's outraged because it happened to him. But you never read where he's in mourning and it was such a terrible loss, and you know,
That's just for him.
so
Well, you know, it's like the what if, as a Levite, he had went out to the meeting,
yeah,
because they kind of traveled the area, I mean, the nation, didn't they? The Levites moved, they didn't have a set
well,
plan.
they didn't have an inheritance, but they were given land in sections of Israel to grow, you know, their herds and that kind of thing for sacrifice. So the Levites actually were assigned areas.
But more or less, they were traveling preacher, or,
To a certain extent. For the most part, they would travel to wherever the temple was. And certain times, you know, they had assignments in the temple certain times of the year where they would go work that and then they'd go back home. Honestly, the Levite was displaced. You know, he really should have been in one of the cities that was allotted to wherever he was allotted.
Already wasn't.
And yet he had done his, he had done his own thing. He was not living with other Levites. He was off on his own with his concubine. And so, you know, whether he was supposed to be traveling or not, you know, is not the issue. It's the fact he chose to live in his own place and apart from, you know, where he was supposed to be. So, you know, the theme is there was no king for this section, and everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And it's just a harsh reality that when we as human beings get there, we can do some terrible things in our
Nowadays
views.
It would be, if it feels good, do it, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Nike commercial. If it feels good, do it. So anyway, next week we will discuss chapter 21. So come with questions and that kind of thing, and we'll complete this particular book. So it's been a good study. It's been a good study. Thank you all for being with us. Hope to see you soon. God bless.
The one, the pages